We do have a capacity here, so there has only allowed 3 people per. Oh, cow. If you have not signed the sign sheet, pass down that. And we're gonna get some sign up. Okay. So we're gonna pass out, which means I finished, I sat here, so everybody that's sitting needs to stay quiet, unless we're at the microphone talking, okay? Sure.
But he said he was, but I texted him back. Okay.
Hello. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting. Someone in the audience asked me if when we started the meeting, we would have a moment of silence for the people in Enoch that are going through what they're going through right now with that murder-suicide that happened. And so I said, sure, we could all. So I'll give us a timer in a minute. Okay, that may not be quite a minute, but we will move on. Okay, so as everybody here knows, we are here for a special meeting tonight. And the first item to talk about, I do want to say, I'm sorry, before we get going, that everybody needs to be as quiet as possible so Crystal can hear, because she's got to be, as clerk, she's got to hear what's going on and what people are saying. And if there's a lot of talk and a lot of noise, she can't hear, to make her, to take minutes. Second, don't know where our town attorney is. He was supposed to be here, and so he's just running late. Third, when we get to the point to where I take comment, what I want you guys to do, because there's so many people here, that if someone says something that is all you were gonna say, and don't come up and reiterate what that person said. It's a waste of our time. We'll be here forever, given how many people we are. So what I'm thinking, this might work, it might not, but I was just thinking, if someone comes up and says something that you agree with, when they're done, just maybe, I don't know, give a thumbs up, something to tell me that's how many people agree with what that person said, to give me an idea of what the people in the room think. Yeah, or, okay, well, you can do a thumbs down if you disagree. But I want to get some idea, and so that we don't have multiple people saying the same thing over and over and over. And maybe some of you, if you've talked ahead of time as to what it is that you're thinking, maybe you can designate one person to come up and say how many people you're speaking for, so that we save time. Okay, so moving on with those ground rules. So we're going to start off. I want to talk to you about, this is particularly why I wanted Heath to be here, because he was in the meeting with me at the Water Conservancy District, that we had a meeting on the 21st. I don't know how many of you have seen the newsletter. Crystal just mailed it out yesterday, and I had a letter in an article in the newsletter that talked about what I found out at this Water Conservancy District meeting. And for those of you who have already read the letter, I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, but for those of you who've not read the newsletter, then this will be new information. But went to the Water Conservancy District on December 21st, and I was going to be asking him questions about that were based on what information that was in my newsletter last month, where I talked about the water, that when we max out our water connections, that then we go into the water pooling agreement. And that was what I talked about last month. I went to the Water Conservancy District because I wanted to find out how to calculate the penalty that we would have to pay if we joined the Water Conservancy the water cooling agreement because I could not figure out from the wording in the contract how on earth to calculate this. And so we went to the meeting, and before I could even start asking my questions, the director said, there's something you need to know. And he said, we're revising the water cooling agreement. And I said, yes. And he said, what you need to know is that right now, with where it stands right now during the revision process, that they're changing the language of the water cooling agreement to say no more municipalities can join. And I asked, what does that mean for Virgin? And they said, when you hit your 1,000, you're done. No more development when you hit your 1,000 connections. And I said, okay. And then Heath was there, and Heath's immediate response is, well, we need to see about joining that water cooling agreement right now. And so we talked a little bit about whether or not that is something we want to explore, which I think is something we want to talk about tonight. And where we are right now, we are at approximately 700 of our 1,000 connections. Yes.
I have an update on that, the requirement.
Okay.
I had Crystal go through everything and also calculate the ERCs, for people like Zion, Buffalo and so forth. So that ends up, then you ought to talk to Crystal.
Okay.
But this shows we have 441 left connections.
Okay. I went to the Water Conservancy District in June and went through papers and accounts to calculate what we had. And at that point, we had used 688 of our water connections. I had the papers, the contracts from all the different developers like Stu for KOA, how many water connections he had paid for, how many KOA, AutoCamp had already paid, and all the different developers that have already paid for their water connections. And we had 688, and that was at the end of June. That's why I said I will
This
dispute
comes
that.
from the town records.
I understand, but mine came from the Water Conservancy records. And the contracts and the bills that we get.
There is I did catch that would be overbilled.
Yes, I know about that. I was gonna bring that up. I plan to bring that up.
Because there's two parties to the agreement, we probably need to make sure. I mean, what
Exactly.
we think it is, Leroy, and what they think it is.
I asked Zach when I met with him yesterday
Oh,
to provide us with that and provide us with what the penalty might be if we have to take it away. I met with Zach yesterday.
I would like to see the calculation of both connections and the ERU conversion to the 1,000-acre fee that we have under the agreement. Because things that are considered.
Zach hasn't got that. to me yet.
But I went in June and had all our different billing and talked with Zach. And then he called in the person who is in charge of the billing. And we sat down and went over what exactly the bills showed. And so we came up with 688. So that's just a hair under 700. So I am working with the assumption that we have approximately 300, give or take, either side. Could be a little more, could be a little less. And we did catch an error in their billing just recently, and they were adjusting the bills where they were billing us for connections in error. And so that's why we have to go back. We have to go see exactly what they think we have versus what we think we have. And it will take some doing. But I think it's best to proceed with 300, give or take, given where we were in June. And there's been more people come in since then.
Now, did Zach tell you that with us giving up the 300 or whatever it is, that he feels that that he can ask the board
Okay,
for no penalty.
okay. Yes, Heath and I talked about that today, but I'm not ready to get there yet. I'm still setting the stage for everybody to understand what happened when we went to the water, what they said at the meeting, which is that they are proposing that no more towns be allowed to join the water pooling agreement. And so while we may make a petition to join right now, there's no guarantee that we will be accepted into the water pooling agreement. I think that the town needs to be prepared for the possibility that we might not get into the water pooling agreement. There's a chance that we will, but there's a chance that we won't. And so I want everybody to know where we stand, what they told us. So now, one of the things that came up, so we said we would explore joining the water pooling agreement now. One of the things that was also proposed was whether or not it would be possible to renegotiate the contract that we currently have. And Zach said he was open to such a thing, and that's all we said. I don't even know what that means, but that's all that we talked about, that he would be open to renegotiating our separate contract if it came to that. And that's because you asked him if he was open to renegotiation, and he said yes. Don't know if you remember asking that, but you did.
His indication to me was that he would like us to join, and he felt there'd be no problem if we do within the next 90 days.
Okay. So what's involved? What did he tell you was
We
involved?
have to do a resolution from the council, and if that passes over the council, then we turn Heath loose with their attorney to draw up the contract.
So Jean, can I get maybe some clarification for people that maybe don't understand the difference between our current contract versus a pooling agreement, what a pooling agreement means? Just because there may be some that don't know what that is, and maybe
Okay.
we should share that.
Okay. No time to take notes. Sorry, guys. I'd like to take notes while we're talking, but I'm not gonna have time. The water pooling agreement, most of the other towns in Washington County are in what's called a water pooling agreement. Not all of the towns, but most of the towns are in this agreement. And I actually think I might let Heath explain it better than me, because Heath represents a town that's in the water pooling agreement, and so he's used to working with it, and I'm not. So would you like to explain it? Okay, how about a microphone?
Pooling agreement, which is actually called the Regional Water Supply Agreement. It was created in 2006. And right now, I think besides Virgin, you have Apple Valley, who is not a municipal party to it. Enterprise, because of their sheer distance. And then you've got towns up the Zion corridor here that are not parties to it. What the Regional Water Supply Agreement does, it says in it that the parties all agree contractually that they have the right to purchase water from the district on a wholesale basis. That in exchange for that right, they have to collect an impact fee on any new development from on behalf of the district. And originally they started, and the cities were actually collecting the impact fee, and now they've found out that it's easier. The cities just send the developer or the homeowner who's building the house directly to the Conservancy district. They calculate it up properly, they have them pay, and then they bring back a receipt, and the cities have to confirm that the impact fee has been paid. In doing so, what a lot of municipalities realized, and what was very important to these municipalities, is that they did not give up their water rights that they already owned, and they did not give up their water systems that the Conservancy district independently was building, has been for past 30 years, building out their own infrastructure throughout all of Washington County, that they can continue to use and sell their own water. And that if because of growth, they need additional water, they can purchase it from the district. District has the ability to open valves with meters and start putting water right into a city's, they are connected to every city's water system. And the thing about the pooling agreement that was unclear to some cities, and that one of the big things they're trying to correct with the amendment is whether or not cities could go out and continue to develop their own independent water sources, buying water rights, getting well sites, installing a well, transmission lines and putting water into their own tanks in their system or not. It was unclear in the original two versions of the water pooling agreement. This new version, they want to make it very clear. They do not want any cities independently going out and trying to develop new water, because they feel strongly that water should be developed on a regional basis. And water is one of those things that you don't always have the requisite water right underneath where cities are. I mean, we look at where we get our water from. We get water from wells that are piped along through and up here into Virgin and the corridor, among other places. So we have water that is taken out of the ground in Anderson Junction, if that helps some of you understand and appreciate, and that helps you understand the regional nature of water. So this pooling agreement, they charge a rate for their wholesale water. Now, some cities who bought water back years and years ago, and they've already paid off their infrastructure, so their tanks are paid for and their pumps, they could probably generate water to serve their residents for a lower rate than what the wholesale rate is that they can buy water from the district for. Because obviously the district is doing all sorts of water development projects. We see the reservoirs, we see reuse plants that they're looking at. They're looking at Lake Powell Pipeline. They're looking at all sorts of different things, and they're buying water and they're finding ways to put it into their system. When the town looked at this, and this was at the very beginning of my representation of the town, Ron Thompson, very specifically, who was the general manager of the Conservancy District, said, I'd probably stick with your retail water agreement that you have. It's a 1997 agreement that the city has. The background on that is that the city gave the water rights that it owned to the district, and the district guaranteed contractually to give us back 1,000 connections or 1,000 acre feet of water. We keep and we own our own water system still, but it's basically the district's water now, and we have this contractual commitment. He felt like the rates that we can charge would be better than the rates that we would have to charge under the pooling agreement. However, now we fast forward 18 years later, from 2006, when this whole thing first started, to where we're at now. The likelihood of the Powell pipeline, it's not dead, but the likelihood of it coming is pushed back even further if it's going to happen at all. And the district is drastically trying to develop other water resources, even to the point that they're looking at options of like a water salination plant where they take salt out of water and to the degree that it's clear enough that it can be drinkable potable water. So they're looking at all options. What we need to understand now is, though, that when that cost up front on a regional basis, costs have continued to rise. And if we go and look at, once we get to 1,000 connections, or we use up 1,000 acre-feet of water, then what do we do? Either everything stops, or any growth or development stops, which may not be a bad necessary thing, or we have to go out and try to develop our own waters. We just, we'd have to buy water, we have to find some place, either get it diverted, put a diversion to one of our existing wells, or drill a new well and put a transmission line and try to get it moved into our water tank, or tanks. And that can be, if we took that cost, us trying to do it on a small scale basis, buying water at rates the water rights are selling for now, we could conceivably make our water rate a lot higher than what we would be blending with the district at their wholesale rate. And so that's what we're looking at. How is the best way to deal with this? One thing that is very good that everyone should know about the water pooling agreement, and I was involved representing Tokerville at the time they agreed to go into it. Most of your small municipalities, especially the ones along the eastern side of the county, were very concerned about what happens in the event of water scarcity and drought. Because obviously the biggest purchaser of water from the pool is St. George City, and next you have Washington City, and then you have Ivins and Santa Clara. And will they get preference when we don't have as much water in the reservoirs, and to who gets to buy the water? And what was negotiated, and the Conservancy District agreed to this, and they're not trying to change it in these new revisions, is that it is a pro rata equal reduction in the event of scarcity and drought. So small municipalities don't get penalized, and St. George City says, no, we want all the water in the reservoir. They can't do that. We get our proportional share. So we are protected if we, but we're not under our existing agreement. We get to 1,000 and they're scarce, and they're only, they decide to put in water restrictions, and they're only 55 or 60% of current of necessary traditional watershed. And they said, we're not going to give you all the water that we normally give you. You guys who may be used to 10,000 gallons of water a month may be having to deal with 6,000 gallons of water a month. And we can't control that. If they technically, if they wanted to, they could even gouge us possibly higher. And I don't know if we have any contractual recourse under our current agreement. Where I do know very specifically the provisions in the pooling agreement is that we would be treated in Virgin here, just like we'd be treated if we were all residents of St. George City.
If we're in the water pooling.
If we're in the pooling.
So the one thing you did mention that water rates would probably go up. I think you mentioned that a little while ago. The other thing that has already, like right now. You go ahead and talk. Right now in Virgin, our impact fee for a new water connection, we charge $2,350, correct? $2,350. That's just for the water. I'm not talking about any of the other fees for impact fees, just water for the connection.
No.
What is it?
4,291.
Okay.
And then the 2,225.
What's that?
That's the Washington County fee for the availability. So they paid a 2,225 availability.
Got it.
4,291 is the water fee.
What's
Got
the 11,800?
That's all everything combined, streets, roads, parks.
All sorts of fees. Yeah.
Including one.
Including.
Yes, including water right now, but the Water Conservancy District did just pass a resolution raising the price of the impact fees, correct? Okay, so right now we pay 4,000 some odd dollars for a connection.
The impact fee we charge is based under our 97
Right.
agreement. It's not the same impact fee that new development is paying under the pooling agreement.
Correct. I
And
want to tell them
so
what
a
it
new
is.
development is going to be paying more because they're paying towards a regional, project.
Right, but I just want people to understand that if we join the water pooling agreement, the impact fee for someone to, for their house, for a new house is going to be significantly more than what it is right now under our 97.
There's the thought being is that new development should be paying for its burden, and that's. Yeah. The other thing that we need to realize, when I say that water rates may go up, there is a component to the way that they charge. They charge a $1.75 surcharge. And that is not necessarily based on usage. It's not part of the actual rate, it's a surcharge. And they found that that is one of their best ways to create a consistent revenue stream so that they can bond and borrow against for their projects that they're developing. Some lenders, bond issuers don't like impact fees because when the economy slows down and there's less building, there's less impact fees. And so, a water district's revenue can go up and down if it's just based off of impact fees. But if you've got every user, every resident who lives in a city that is a member of the pooling agreement, everybody is paying $1.75 a month in the surcharge, and that is a consistent stream of income, which lenders like, and it allows them to build reservoirs, put pipelines, do desalination plants, and those types of things.
Okay, fine. I just wanted everybody to understand that it will cost more. If we join the water pooling agreement, it will cost more. All right, Beth, Jean. Sorry, I don't know where that came from.
So Leroy, myself, and a few individuals and developers met also with the Water Conservancy just to get some clarification for the same things that we're seeing with the concerns over water. Here's what we came away with. They said that in order to join the water pooling agreement, we would as a town, if they would even let us, that never said, which is likely not. But if we were to join it, we would have to pay the $1.75 surcharge per unit in the town per month for the last 16 years, which is a hefty, somewhere around $170,000 to $200,000.
Plus 5%.
Plus
Plus
5% every year.
It's called the latecomer fee, and they've done that so that municipalities wouldn't hold out and that everyone joined in the beginning, and we didn't join in the beginning.
That's right.
Because we had a different contract that was pretty good.
Pretty good. We had a good contract.
But now we're getting to the end of our.
So I started with the conversation with Zach. I said, your predecessor specifically guided us to remain on this contract because he said it was the better deal. Now you're telling us because we're staying on there, you're going to penalize us. And so we talked about some different avenues and possibilities. And the one that was mentioned earlier. What if the town were to forfeit back a portion or all of the acre feet that we still have remaining? In exchange, you waive this $1.75, $200,000 fee in the past, and keep our rates where they currently are. And he said, I think we can do that. I said, do you think we would have a problem getting on this pooling agreement if we did this? He said, no, I don't. I think this is a much better deal than, trying to come in and saying that you're going to back pay all this money. He says the other towns would be a lot less likely to want to let you on if you're doing it that way. So that's what the conversation was.
And he did indicate the rate's the same.
He did. He said that I said, we're currently paying $1.35. Now that doesn't count this surcharge that you're talking about.
Yes.
The $1.35 rate. He said, yes. He says there are adjustments always, but it'd be very minor. He said you would.
$1.35 for what?
Per 1,000
Per
gallons.
1,000.
And once we hit 1,000, the next tier would stay the same. Now, he did say new growth, it would be $1.35 per the first 1,000. I mean, for a new connection, first of all, they would be paying around $14,800 on their connection fee, that impact fee. And then they would be $1.35 per unit or per 1,000 gallons. And then the next 1,000 would be $10. It's pretty substantial for anyone coming in. And he said, there's other stuff with the developers. I said, well, that stuff that the attorney would work with your attorney to look out. Our concern is, number one, development is not halted while this is being considered. And number two, the rates of our town and the cost that we have to pay out doesn't impact the current citizens. And so that was what he verbally said, yes, we can do. Obviously,
So
that's something that you'd have to take on.
the concern that we have is that the decision to allow the town to join the pooling agreement is made by the board of directors for the Washington County Water Conservancy District, which is mostly made up by
Mayors.
the big players, cities in town. And there was a concern on the gentleman, on Zach Renstrom's mind, that if you think about it, if everyone has always thought the Lake Powell pipeline was gonna be the fix, and it's looking like it may not be the fix, or if it is, it's a lot further down the road than expected. And as the cities are starting to realize this, they're saying, we only have an infinite supply of water. And if we let another municipality in, we're just diluting our portion of the pie. We don't want to let anybody else in. Now, that's very selfish from a big municipality in this county's standpoint. It's not very friendly to the town here, but it could be a position and a play. What I think Zach is saying is that if we looked at the value of foregoing some of our rights under the 1997 agreement as consideration for the latecomer fee, they would look at that, and they would look at that almost as an acquisition of some water, because they have to keep 300 more connections or 400 more connections set aside, have the availability for it for this town, and they don't have to worry about that. They can bring that back into their pool essentially. And he thinks that that alone would give the board a pretty strong position to not let any of the big boys bully the board into not letting this in.
And in addition to that, and this, I hate this kind of stuff because I like to take time to look at stuff. He said, time is of the essence. This new contract that they're building, we would want to start this process before that contract gets completed.
Now.
Right. So I've asked Heath to start drafting a resolution along those lines.
Hey,
for us to
thanks for
consider.
talking to me about that before you told me
Well,
to do that.
anybody can ask for a resolution, but we'll all vote on it. So just ask if you can take a look and put together a resolution that we can look at in our regular meeting this month.
I have one other thing for the public to know. Years ago, the town decided that they needed to start putting money aside in case we have to join the pooling agreement. And so we have nearly $240,000 set aside just for that one purpose. So even if, they won't null and void that agreement, we still have the money to do it without impacting any of the citizens at all. This money's been set aside by the town, and the money's come from the citizens as they have paid their monthly water.
But we would rather use that money for
Something else,
depreciation
yeah.
replacement or repair of our existing system. That would be the ideal thing to use and not use it to pay a latecomer fee.
Pump up that CID budget.
Mayor, at my own recourse, since you asked me to get involved in this, have included in your packets all the information that Zach gave us. And I would like, between now and the next meeting, that all the council people read that so that we can come and make an educated decision on the 19th.
Heath, did you get a copy of that?
That should be in there.
That first one, that's the agreement with Santa Clara, that's what Zach said we should give to you as a template.
This,
Santa Clara? Yeah, that's the one.
Santa Clara was a municipality that didn't come in initially. I think they came in I can tell you the date.
Yeah. I heard those.
They set out for a while, 2011. So when St. George City joined in 2016, most of the other cities followed suit. And that was all between 2006 and 2007. Santa Clara sat out for about 3 or 4 more years. And then I think when Rick Rosenberg became mayor and his engineering background, he quickly appreciated and saw the writing on the wall. And brought them in.
Okay. With that in mind, that, well, before I say anything further, Cindy, you have anything to say, Paul? Agenda, microphone?
No, that's all right, but my questions can wait till the next month, because they're related to
In our next meeting?
calculations, yeah,
Our next
the
meeting.
next meeting.
Okay. Misty, do you have anything to say? Any input about the water pooling agreement versus anything at all that we've talked about so far?
I don't think we should rush this. I feel like this is kind of some of this is a rush decision, and I feel like, I like the pooling agreement idea.
The what?
We should try with the pooling agreement idea to, see what Zach's, I like Zach's idea, of trying to see if we can get.
But what he,
Incorporating our 300 and pooling into the pooling agreement.
okay, because what Jean just said is we have to act now. You know, you just said you want to not act now.
Can you wait till January 19th so we can all? finish
Yeah,
this
of course.
decision?
That's what we're saying.
That's the problem, is we need to take the whole week.
If he puts together a resolution, then we can read all this stuff, discuss it, and then,
Right,
Just so you know, the attorneys for the municipalities have been meeting with the district's council and reviewing drafts of this new second amended and restated pooling agreement. For about 2 months now.
Yes.
They've been providing feedback. And the district is going through trying to figure out how to best meet some of the concerns of the cities. But I will tell you, one of the things that, and I think it evidences the fact that without some carrot to dangle, step in to get into the pool, it is one of the issues or one of the major changes to the agreement that is not being contested by anybody is a complete exclusion of any further joinder to the pool.
Which is why we need to try to join before they do that.
And so I envision that it is probably another 3 to 5 month process before this agreement will be starting to be signed by the participating members of the pool. At that point in time, Zach Renstrom is probably saying, as a district and as the district board who runs the pooling arrangement, I don't know that we have the ability now to do it. That's probably why he's.
We don't have
saying-
the ability to do what?
Well, if cities start adopting the amended and restated pooling agreement that has a clear prohibition against additional joinder of member municipalities, then it's going to be too late. That's probably why Zach is saying, if you can do it, we can get the town to join now before anybody starts, we get that. Then we can say, hey, they came in before we put we would basically be the last municipality in the door before the door gets locked.
right, and he directed, and this isn't instant, he just said, if you can get into this in the next 2 to 3 months, those were his, is that correct, 2 to 3 months? So I'm just suggesting if he gets started on a resolution and we get it voted, then they can negotiate over the next 2 to 3 months to get a good agreement for the town. Because it really will come down to him negotiating for the town to see if we can do less than 300 back or whatever. I mean, there's gonna be all kinds of stuff in that, but you gotta get started on the negotiating process is all I'm suggesting.
When we brought up to Zach that we had 300 or more connections that we were given, his whole body language changed. And it was apparent that they would like that, and so would the other cities. So I just want you all to know that we have a good chance. It's not firm, but we need to do it now.
And from what you said, that we would know in 90 days? That what you said earlier? You mentioned 90 days.
I mentioned we needed to get an application into them before 90.
The application or the process to join the pools, we basically have to adopt a resolution asking to join.
And then how long did he give any indication how long it would take after that for the board to consider
He'd have to get it on his
their
board,
agenda, blah, blah, blah?
properly noticed, all the members, cities would give notice of, that's. And I'm guessing they would want to run straight to it, put it on, and after they get our application, have it decided on in 10 days, they're probably gonna want some feedback from this.
So we're talking probably 6 months before we're gonna know, May or June.
4, 5.
Yeah.
Maybe
So May or June. Okay. So the reason I scheduled the special meeting is I wanted everybody to know what was going on with regard to water, what we found out, that there's an issue about whether we'll be able to join the water pooling agreement. And I want everyone to be aware, if we do not get into the water pooling agreement, then the remaining 300, 350, whatever the number is, give or take somewhere around 300 would be all we have left. So I want everybody to be aware of what is at stake here. Hold on, Deb.
Okay.
I'm not ready for questions yet.
No, it's okay.
I had brought this up because I wanted everyone to be aware, if we don't get into the water pooling agreement, if we only have these somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 water connections left, I had this moratorium thing that's coming up later in the meeting. The reason I had put this on was I wanted us all to think about what we would do if we really end up limited to the 300, what are we gonna do? And these water connections could go really fast. And we could end up in a game of musical chairs where instead of one chair being taken away at the time's up, you could have 5 or 6 chairs taken away. And some people in town would get mud water for a project they want to do, others would not. And so my whole goal with setting this meeting was to talk about it and to understand that what I had in mind was a way that we should start figuring out a way to share. How to share so everybody gets something. Yeah, not everybody gets everything they want, but everybody gets something. A way to compromise and share that 300 less, the 300 that are left, if that's what we come down to. So what we're about to face here in just a few minutes is a decision. Well, no, we're not facing it right now. We're gonna put off until our January 17th meeting to discuss the resolution and vote on the resolution, the proposed resolution, and whether to try to go after joining the water pooling agreement. But in the meantime, we've got 6 months that where we'll be waiting to hear. And what can happen in those 3 months? And if we don't make it into the water pooling agreement, where are we 6 months from now? And that's what I want everybody to be thinking about. Because I know there, besides Weeping Buffalo, I know there are several other, and several of the projects already have their water nailed down. They've already paid their fees. They're good to go. They've got it set in stone for them. But there are several projects that people want to do that have not yet come to the town, that what I'm concerned about is that there just might not be enough for, if we're not, this is if we're not in the water pooling agreement, there may not be enough for everybody's projects. And that's why I wanted us to think about how to share if it comes down to that. So we have to decide what do we want to do in the next 6 months while we wait to find out if we get in the water pooling agreement. Okay, so that's all I want to talk about with regard to item number 1 on the agenda. Anybody else have, oh yeah, okay, sorry, thank you. Okay,
We're gonna run over the top of this if we don't let them talk.
yeah, okay, Deb. No, come up, you have to come to the microphone, you cannot talk from back there. And talk into the microphone. Do not talk at it, talk in it.
So Deborah Maysfield, been in Virgin for over 10 years now. And I have about that.
That doesn't sound like any sound, okay?
So I think you kind of answered my question. Of those 300 plus or minus, have any of them been earmarked for projects of people that are from out of town? And secondly, if we were to go with the pooling agreement, how does that leave us with development in terms of water? That's it.
Jay Lee. I've been involved with this since they made the pulling agreement. Anyway, just give a little history. Joy Henderleiter did that, and actually Virgin was the first municipality that had an agreement with the Water Conservancy District. That's why we have the one we have. When they come up with this water pulling agreement, the cities, the first one that they came up with, the cities had to give all their water to the Water Conservancy District, and they never got anybody to sign up, so they had to change that one. And it sounds like it's getting a little better, but I don't like the fact that you can't go out and get more water. Move up on it. My son-in-law works for the Water Conservancy District, and anybody, or for the sewer district, pardon me. And any city that puts water into the sewer district, that water is theirs when it goes through. So if we have a sewer down in Laverton, how are we going to get our water back up here to Virgin? So I like that one where they were going to put that in the Munch property, and we could have good use of that. One of the things that Ron Thompson tried to do was, that Joy wouldn't go along with, was he said, when you put in a sewer, then the Conservancy District gets the use of the water. So I think we need to look at that. So maybe we can take water out of the Virgin River and put it back in down there. You know, there's different things like that you can maybe look at. And also, right now, the county's out of water. And what they're doing is they're taking irrigation water and converting it to culinary use. They're always looking at Virgin irrigation company's water, because Virgin is the third oldest water user on the Virgin River. One else gets Rockville and Springdale is number 1 and 2. And we're number 3, and everybody else gets dried up before we are. And a share of water converted to culinary use can supply 20 homes. And that's what they're using right now to keep getting their water going. So how long is that going to happen? You know, maybe if we go with water pulling agreement, all of a sudden they say, okay, we don't have any more water, we'll need your stuff under. You know, there's always all these variables, and there's always something we need to look at. What can we do in the future? I don't think it's seems like everybody always gives you something to say, oh, you gotta act now, you gotta do this, and you do, and sometimes you think, well, maybe that wasn't quite the right thing to do, but that's my thought. Oh, it's not bad, and you're not in water.
John Staples. I just wanted to present a thought, and Jay is a wealth of information, and I appreciate everything you just said. But I want to present a thought. And we'll pick on Springdale for a second. If Springdale doesn't join the pooling agreement, and this drought continues, and they start running out of water up there, the district is not going to step in and bail them out. That's a thought we should all think about. Should we or should we not join the pooling agreement? Depends upon if we're willing to roll the dice whether our current water is going to hold us. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I did have some questions about.
Say your name.
Oh, sorry, Lee Ballard. About the fact that I was on council when we did not join the pooling agreement. And some of the concerns have already been mentioned. One of them was that we were going to lose some pretty old water rights, but that was just for the irrigation company? That was all about there? Because the town owns some rights that were quite old. And so, and that is what matters when it comes right down to it, as far as if the water dries up. So I just wanted to mention that the town owns some water rights now that are pretty good ones.
That we could use to, for negotiation with the Water Conservancy District? Or you're thinking we can develop some
I don't know
water?
whether you'd ever want to give them up. But if you didn't, who knows? I don't know. You'd have to you need to be aware of that. You also are probably aware that when I was on council, we also agreed when we decided not to join the pooling agreement to buy any irrigation rights, any irrigation shares that came available when we had enough money to buy them and kind of keep them in the bank. Either for providing our own water down the road or for trading to the water pool. So that, I know that we've been doing that. I mean, at least we did a lot of it while I was on the council, but I don't know if you, how many you have, if you have more than you use. And my only other thing is that if before you decide whether or not to apply to join the pool, I hope that you will have some pretty reliable estimates of what our water bills are gonna be. So, and I don't know if you guys talked to Zach about that or not, but.
It'll be the attorneys working that out, sorry, I shouldn't have been.
Right, so we'd wanna know that, we would not wanna know at least a range before,
You're here.
okay, thank you.
Jared Westhoff with Zion Sunset Holdings, commonly referred to as Weeping Buffalo or White Bison. How's that?
That's good.
As far as water rights, I just want to point out that there's typically a principle applied with almost every municipality in the state of Utah, and I believe it's because it's the state law. And I'm not a lawyer, so I may be not exactly the right terms here, but hopefully the principle comes through that most of the time the water right is secured for most cities is that building permit. Sometimes I've seen it when a plat is recorded, but most of the time it's when a building permit is issued. And so there's a principle of first in time, first in right, or due process. And I'd point out on that due process issue that there's a case from Hilldale recently where they actually discriminated and told one applicant, we don't have the water, and then told another applicant of a different class that they did have the water. And in the lawsuit, the damages that were asked for were $3 million, and the jury was so frustrated with the city picking and choosing who could have the water versus who was there ready and willing to pull a building permit, that they awarded in damages of over $6 million.
To the one who had been denied the water.
Denied the water. So I just think it's important that, you know, that we don't go down this road where we think, oh, we're gonna allocate so many connections to residential versus commercial versus like, to me,
You're
I'm,
in the audience. Sorry.
to me, I'm working hard to do a nice project. And if, whether it's houses or somebody else's project that gets to the available connections before me, that's just how it is. So it's, I don't think we can sit there and create classes and then deny people due process when they develop, or when they want to permit. The other thing I would bring up is there is another way that hasn't been discussed, and it's pretty common in the state of Utah, that let's say you bump up to 1,000 connections and pooling agreement isn't signed, or you're still negotiating on pooling agreement, whether you want to be in there or not. It's pretty typical in Utah that you would just say to the applicant, hey, you need to go find the water rights, the paper rights, and contribute them in. And, you know, here there'd be some devil in the details of, you'd have to work with Virgin on that, work with the Conservancy and amend the agreement, but you could get the water rights in there. And I bring it up because we view that as a fail-safe on our project. We have significant water rights that are in the drainage of the Cottom Well. And if it gets to that, we're ready to go there. And so there is other alternatives. And those alternatives even fit within the pooling agreement. So we have those water rights for projects and leads, and they could be applied here as well, where the Cottom Well is actually closer to leads than Virgin. So, and then we have water rights here. So that is another avenue. So thank you for this good discussion.
Hello, my name is April McKeon. And when he was talking, I just kind of thought that as we go on for the next 6 months and say we start allowing projects to go forward. And Jane said that we had talked to the Water Conservancy District and offered to give them the balance of the water rights remaining, and they would give us a deal or whatever that was. But if we have all this development within that time frame before that happens, we won't have any hookups.
We'll have some, but we certainly.
Well, we would have
certainly
less.
Yeah.
So that's just a comment I wanted to make. And then I took a look at I know a conditional use permit on White Buffalo, and that first group of buildings on parcel 7, it looked like the water rights for those 200 units would be about 200 connections. So if we only have 300 connections, and then they use up 200 connections, and I mean, it can go fast, I guess is my point. So we need to be kind of careful how we approach this, because if we are thinking that we might be able to give back something in terms of our connection to the Conservancy District, but then we've already given them out, so to speak. Okay, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Carolyn Matzler. I've been here for 54 years, so I just wanted to give everybody a little bit of background as far as what Virgin started out with. Alan knows how bad our fathers fought. My dad, you know that little hill that goes, that road that goes up the Gooseberry that's scary, scary? We'd go up that and come down that all the time because my dad was always up there checking the wells, making sure we had water, fighting for the water. If anybody knows anything about old fashioned, those guys, that's what they fought over. They were always bad blood over water rights. But I just want everybody to know that if we don't do something with
the Water Conservancy, they are huge. They can take other stuff too. And I know that we could not do it. We'll have this, so many left. And then what happens when people can't develop that have already put in hundreds and thousands of dollars to get their plat maps, to the months of what for how many years? My family, I don't know if everybody knows who we are, but I have 6 brothers that all have huge families. 5 of us all live in Virgin. We all have big families. Only one of my nephews, 2 of my nephews, that are outside of my brother's compound have been able to build here. And that was because we had the opportunity to make a subdivision, and he was able to get a lot for a decent price. But we also have property. We own the majority of the property on this side of town. And our family relies on that money from that property to take care of our enormous family. I mean, it's not like, I know I hear greedy landowners, I hear that all the time. We're not greedy. I've lived in Berkeley my entire life. I love to see that people are coming, taking advantage of it. My dad had this property, he sold it for $10,000 an acre.
How does this help us decide whether or
This
not
helps
to
us
go to the
decide.
Water Conservancy District?
It helps us decide to go to the Water Conservancy District, because if we shut down our growth, we stagnate, we die. We have no water,
I agree.
so that's all I want to say is we need to look at other people besides just our little people that only have certain things. So,
Okay. Thank you. Okay, only a couple more people and then we're moving on.
Caleb Spenlove. I learned a little bit of a lesson recently about the old adage, a bird in hand is worth 2 in the bush. And for me, I think having a certainty of water, though it may be minimal, is preferable. And just like a gentleman from White Bison mentioned, that we can bring in more people when they bring their own water shares. And that's definitely something that we can put on developers, we can put on people that want to move in. And to allow people to bring water to the table is definitely a smart way to do it as well. And it allows for growth still. And it makes sure that we have the connections, and it makes us less dependent upon some other entity. We're already dependent upon the state in terms of our water rights and how old they are. And so these other bigger, newer towns, they've got these younger rights, and the state's gonna step in and start taking those away. And we've already seen that happen. And so by allowing others to bring in old water rights, that secures our town's prosperity for growth, while being responsible with what we have. And it makes sure that we're not beholden to some other group that's managed by a large body of people that isn't representative of Virgin. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
I don't have a question, I have one clarification. And that is, what is the connection between our water hookups and our sewer septic tank allowances? And will joining the pooling agreement, how will that impact that?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So that was one of the questions with Zach. This is kind of a roundabout deal, I'll make it as short as I can, but one of the things that the mayor and I have been working on since before she got in, we started, we worked pretty closely with the sewer district or not with the sewer district, but with Sunrise Engineering to do a wastewater study. And the agreement with Mike, with the sewer district, was once we have finished that wastewater study, we will begin exploring joining them as a body politic. That was one of the first questions Zach asked is, what are you guys doing to join with the sewer district? That's a short-term deal, but it's a start since there's so much cost bringing the sewer up the hill. But Yes,
That
we're
was
working.
my follow-up, is cost to the residents.
So to join with this, with them as the body politic, there's no additional cost. But when we eventually get sewer here, it's likely gonna be additional cost. Because it's gonna cost millions to bring that up over the hill. But as far as they are concerned, as far as the water concerns the district was concerned, when we discussed with Zach, as long as we're working with the sewer district at the same time, that will be a communication between all three parties. Am I right on that, Keith? Make sure I'm not misquoting.
Oh, I'm sorry, did you nod your head yes or something? Okay, I didn't hear, I was going to make a note, I didn't hear an answer. Yeah, I don't know, other than when we bring sewer up here, I don't know that this is going to make any, joining the water pooling agreement would make any difference in whether we're limited to 1 home per acre. I don't think it's gonna make, until we have sewer, I don't think that changes. And the study that you were talking about with Sunrise Engineering, this was a wastewater study. And we just got the final report. Well, it was the same day I met with the Water Conservancy District. It was just before that we had that Zoom call with them. And we have one more meeting in January this month, and then that's it, we're done with them. And but they said that what they were proposing was gonna cost $18 million for the town. Whereas for sewer, what they were proposing to be done, if we were going to maintain it ourselves. Whereas Ash Creek, I asked Mike what it would cost if they were going to bring sewer to us, and he said $4 million. Okay, there we go. So just thought I'd throw that out there. Okay, I guess that's it.
Gene,
Yes,
Zach did mention that there were some really good grants, remember that? Really good grants where the city could get 75% and then the body of politics steps in for the other 25, you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
well, I remember that a year or two ago that Ash Creek thought they had all 100% of the money to be able to bring the sewer up, and then it disappeared and the state allocated the money to some other project. And so the whole plan fell through. Okay. I had on here next to discuss the conditional use permit dated December 22nd, 2022. But I'm wondering if we should, I thought that made sense in organization for today's meeting to talk about that before this temporary zoning ordinance about limiting development, but I'm wondering if we should go ahead and talk about that.
I moved to, we amend the agenda to move item C up before item B.
All right. Oh, and I second. So all in favor?
All right,
Okay, my initial thought on this, with this proposal about this temporary zoning ordinance limiting development for 6 months, when you guys were talking about your meeting with Zach earlier, I guess it was this week, earlier this week, did you guys have that? Zach?
yesterday.
Yesterday. I was initially thinking a proposal to, because I was thinking that you meant 90 days we would know, and my first thought had been, okay, well, we could just put off this, I let this go for tonight and bring it up in 90 days. But it sounds like it really will be more like May or June before we would know if we're in the water pooling agreement or not. And we do have the issue that April brought up about that while we're talking about 300 now, by the time they get to where they're actually debating this with the board members of the Water Conservancy District, we could have less than that because we will have had more water connections signed up for in the meantime. So I'm open to suggestions, comments from other town council members, what you want to do. I know you're right.
I'd like to ask Keith a question.
Okay.
Keith, can we consider this without coming from planning and zoning because it is a zone?
We can, yeah, we can. Yeah, there's a section of the Utah code about temporary ordinances, and if there is a compelling countervailing evidence, if the town has compelling countervailing evidence that a temporary land use ordinance needs to be adopted to protect the health, safety, and general welfare of the public, they can do it without notice and without recommendation from the planning commission. And that's normally when you see moratoriums get put in place, it's because something has hit a municipality that they didn't expect. And you need to say, stop for a minute, let's get this figured out. You know, just put a pause while trying to figure it out. And it sounds like we're trying to figure out how to deal with water,
Yeah, and
groundwater protection.
And so, as you had indicated today, that this had not needed to be, this proposed ordinance had not needed to be posted. But I want everybody to know the reason I put it on was because if we had done this, if we had just had a meeting, voted on this, didn't let anybody know, and then we imposed this moratorium, I figured all of you would really flip out. And so I decided it was better to let people know so that people could have a say. And that's why I put this. I didn't go the route most towns do, which is they just vote on it without letting anyone know. I didn't want to do it that way, just so you know. I didn't think it was fair to people to not know. So, moving on, so you asked about whether or not it needed to go to P and Z, and he said no. So any other thoughts on this from the rest of the town council?
I feel like if your goal of posting it was to hear from the public, that's not.
Okay, well, typically we'll talk and then let them talk, but okay,
But just because, I mean, if that was your goal, so that we can hear it before we
discuss.
that's a better-
All right. Now, this is the part of the meeting where I do not want to hear, I want a constructive comment. I do not want ranting and raving about anything that is not a constructive comment about how do we proceed. That's what I want to know. How do we proceed on this? So if anyone has something to say, I'd like to hear it. Jared.
So this agreement that's currently in place for Virgin was signed in 1997. There's approximately 300 connections left. When it was signed, I think there was already 200-ish.
137.
137. Okay, so there's still what, 37% of the connections available, or 30, or somewhere between 30 and 40% of the connections available.
I guess you could put it that way.
So I guess I'm not seeing the reason that we gotta go sign a
Okay.
moratorium when there's 30 to 40% of the connections still available. When
Yeah.
connections are purchased at building permit stage. And when you have multiple parties, not just those that we work with and ourselves, but multiple parties that have been, they may look like a duck floating on the water, but their feet are moving like crazy underneath the water so that they can get their building permits ready to go. And to come in and just tell them, no, we're going to stop growth when there's 30 to 40% of connections still available on an agreement that was signed in 1997, which is well over 20 years old.
They don't get the building permit, they don't get the connection at the time of building permit. Some people come in and pay, like we do with subdivisions. They go ahead and pay the impact fee and then pay an availability fee, and they get taken out of
The pool.
the pool.
Okay, so whatever that process is.
Yeah.
My point is there's still a lot of connections available. And seems to me that there's a pooling agreement that is worth considering, and why freeze everybody and deny people their hard-earned work when they're sitting there working really hard to get permits? Like, I don't understand
I can.
creating an
okay.
emergency.
All right, go ahead. We'll talk about, I'll do what I was gonna say when we had our discussion. Okay.
That's.
Just down a little bit. Monuments. I would kind of echo what he said. I mean, we have X amount of water. And people who have worked hard and are ready to write the check and reserve it. I mean, that's the way the world works. You know, somebody's like, oh, but someday, that ain't today. No, the water is here now. We all know that water is a finite resource, and if we don't, that's just naivete. And so I would think we've got 1,000, but the only problem is, like, I think Leroy explained, those 300, we're gonna give those in a pooling agreement.
Maybe.
They might not be there. But if I was one of the big cities, I don't think I would want anybody else tapping it. You know, I mean, they don't want to share it. So I don't know if we're being a little maybe optimistic thinking that that agreement would be made. But anyways, I think that the water that we have should be metered out first come, first served. When it's gone, it's gone. And he also made a good comment about people being to go out and secure their own water rights. So.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you right, since you were saying first come, first serve, as far as you're concerned, no moratorium.
You know, as far as a moratorium, I mean, if we were absolutely more, you know, it's a crapshoot with, if I knew they were going to accept us into the pooling agreement, I would say sure, because we'd have those 300, and it would just be, you know, a temporary thing. But we don't have any idea if they're going to accept us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm.
Okay. Wasn't quite sure what
Yeah,
your.
no, sorry about that.
Okay, April.
April McKeon. So it appears, or it seems to me, that we don't really know how many water connections a project is going to take until quite later on in the process. I'll just give you one example. So the LaBrie project, do you know how many water connections they're gonna take with that? We don't know, right? They are already under process. They've been doing all that earthwork, and then it gets to the point where they've done all that work and then all the connections are gone. I mean, in a way, putting a moratorium could help save people a lot of money. I know I just talked about the White Buffalo. I looked at that project. There's 200 units on the parcel that the conditional use permit, right? Okay. Those townhomes, condos, motels, whatever you're gonna call them. I looked at those and came up because they have the laundry facility on site. They're going to be around 200 connections, just that one project. So you're talking about LaBrie still out there. How many are they? I don't know. All the RVs, how many are they? One thing you could do that it would be constructive criticism or not constructive way to think is when someone comes in with a project, they need to do some engineering work to tell you how many connections they're going to take. Okay, that could be on the application, something, because I've never seen, I've tried to find out how much it's going to be on the LaBrie project and all these projects. You know, I know it's an engineering project to get that done, you know, it's design, but they should have some idea before they come in and ask, especially when we're running out of our connection.
Hold on, let me finish my note before you start talking. Oh, I'll say my name. Okay, Lee Ballard.
I think that's a really good thought to make sure that every application that comes in has an estimate of the number of water connections, because where we stand right now, there could be permits that have already been granted for things that we don't even know the count of the connections necessary for. And in fact, it sounds like there are, in fact, there might be permits out that we've never heard about. So I'm grateful to the council for giving some attention to the draining of resources. I think that this 6-month thing is not, it's not going to kill anyone, especially if it is designed to end when you get all those things figured out. How many water connections are already promised? How many are left? How, and all the details about the water pool. Even as one very small contributor to the town's septic saturation, I will be very ashamed if the town is found to be polluting our river. I hope that's not true, but that's another thing that I would like the town to take its time and find out how our groundwater is. The idea of running out of water connections scares me, and not just because I own an undeveloped parcel, which would become unbuildable and valueless. But many other people do too, and that would apply to all sorts of uses. Somebody's gonna, not have a chair at the end of the music, so unless it all gets figured out. I'm pretty confident that you guys will figure it out and that we will have resources to provide for future growth. But I really would like you to make sure that you have a solid plan before allowing any more approvals. So, thank you.
I'm Jonathan Zundell. I'm standing here for Steve Labrie. He wasn't able to get the notice soon enough, so he wasn't able to be here, but he did ask if I'd stand up. Just in response to the comments that were just made, he has gone through the process of getting the approvals. He has paid for his water. So to say that a 6-month delay would not kill anybody, that's not accurate. This is.
If he's already paid for his water, he would not be.
Okay, so yeah, but to finish here, a 6-month delay would have dramatic damaging impact on him and his investors, or anybody else that has gone through the trouble of doing. He is on his project that it's going to be a beautiful project. It's improving parts of Sheep Ridge Road. It's going to bring jobs to the community, but the millions of dollars he has spent, he's 95% finished with his infrastructure. To say, hey, to stop a developer at that point would be very damaging. So I guess his response to your question about the water would be no moratorium. Let's make this pooling, make sure this pooling goes into effect. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Benji Nelson.
Benji
Nelson.
Nelson.
I want to first just thank you and your staff. I've been the builder at Weeping Buffalo. And it has been a pleasure to work with the people that work in your city. It's nice to be able to communicate with people face to face and not have to go on the computer and do things and create a relationship. And I feel like I've done that with several people, and it's been very nice to do. I applaud them for the way that they've acted and performed on behalf of your city. I'm in agreement. I've been a builder and developer for 30+ years. Specifically with design in Buffalo. You have some gentlemen that aren't just here trying to get as many houses or products in that they can to just make money. These guys are putting forth their livelihood, everything they have on the line to build a product, which I've seen they are going out of their way to do this the right way, to bring people here to be able to see what we have here
And I've been a developer to shut these guys down, the millions of dollars that they're paying in interest for the infrastructure and all the things that they've already put out. 6 months, that will kill somebody. That will put them up to where they're in a situation possibly that they would lose everything. So I'm in agreement too, although I don't live in your city. I know that these gentlemen, me as their builder, I care about what's happening here. This isn't just come up here and build something and move out. This is a long-term product that's gonna bring something to your community. As I've been asked by them, I've gone out of my way to find people that would live in your community to be able to have them have the opportunity to build and work with us. And there's many people that if you shut these guys down that are working currently out of the city of Virgin that would not have a job right now as things are slowing down, and I know time is short, so I'll try to cut. So I would say that is not something I would recommend for a moratorium. These people have already put forth their effort, and should have the right to move forward. Thank you.
My name is Lauren Campbell. I'm a resident of Virgin. I am speaking up in favor of a temporary moratorium. I'm speaking up in favor of the option A, the first option on the agenda. And the reason I'm choosing that is because I think that the town of Virgin that I moved to a year and a half ago was a small town. That was one thing that appealed to me. And I knew that any town that's doing the right things is going to grow. You know, growth is a part of living, and that's healthy. But I feel right now we need to take a pause. We need to take a breath, and we need to develop a plan. And I don't think we're really acting out with an advanced plan on what we've got. The fact that we're even having to discuss this water issue tonight is kind of sad that it's coming up. But the things with the septic, with the groundwater systems, the electrical, all these things really need to be looked at, and they need to be evaluated. And I think that with the water, which seems to be the most critical right now that we're discussing, I think that should be the greater than the 1 ERU units. I think the 1 ERU units or less, I think it's okay. I think you can move ahead with that. And if you needed to have further, if you had more concern, 1 month in, after you start talking to the Water Conservancy District, you could change it. You could go to the more restrictive. But I would suggest that you go with the 1 ER unit or more as the moratorium, and it's for a maximum of 6 months. That's the other thing nobody's brought up. It could end in 3 months if you get a water agreement that you're happy with. If you find out there's no groundwater contamination, you know, you could end it. Same thing with the power. So I would urge the town council to consider doing the moratorium for 6 months, the first option, which is the less restrictive.
Thank you, Lauren.
There's a line.
I want to.
Wait, who says there's a line?
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Jerry. I didn't know there was a line.
Hi, my name's Ken Cornelius. Anyway, I just wanted to ask you guys a little bit about putting a pause on limited development of 6 months. You're talking about the Water Conservancy, you have 3 months to get in that pooling agreement. Why not wait for 3 months and then do this? I know it's the water meters you have left are gonna be sold on a first come, first served basis. You know, this may be just creating a panic for everybody that, you know, people are gonna start, buying them up there, they're gonna run out of water. If you did the Water Conservancy District pooling agreement, it would stop the bleeding on the money that you're gonna be back paying. So it's gonna cost more the longer you wait. Water Conservancy has a lot more ways of developing water, a lot more resources to develop water for the town. So I'm in favor of the water development or the water pooling agreement. And also I think that there's a lot of people that have started in town developing that a 6 month moratorium would be really hard on them. I know if it shut everything down, it would hurt me, my business. So I think we should wait at least 3 months, see what happens with Water Conservancy, and I would definitely try to get that pooling agreement.
Okay, thank you, Ken.
I'm a resident, I'm 10 years. I guess for some that's a newbie, but I don't care whether I've been here one day, or as this lovely lady said, 50, 54, with generations before. We've got Mr. Lee here. We as citizens, we're being impacted too. We're going to be asked to pay to get into this pooling. And if we have the chance to use our remaining hookups to mitigate that, I think that's a fair compromise. And I think the only way to get that compromise, not that I'm 100% for the pooling agreement, but we need those hookups available, and a moratorium would allow that. And I feel that is a compromise on the part of developers and residents, because there's a cost to both of us. Our water rates will go up with this pooling agreement, and eventually it will allow for considered development. And it's my understanding that any projects like White Bison, the RV section, would be allowed to continue because they're already active. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So it's not a total shutdown. I think that's a little not quite accurate. And I feel it's a compromise. And I really hoping on every one of these three topics that we are able to consider the other. But one of those others is the citizen who lives here and has an impact. So I just want to make sure that that is considered as well. I support the moratorium because I feel it is a fair compromise as we investigate this pooling agreement.
Still one more, Jared.
On the leverage, further to what April and Darwin just said, just from a fundamental negotiation point, you have to, if you're gonna negotiate good faith, you have to know what your inventory is. You've got to know how you're gonna maintain that. So if you go in and talk to the Water Conservancy, and I'm a bit like Arlene in terms of whether I'm for pooling or not. If you're gonna negotiate with them, you gotta have a firm leverage point. And if you keep you're giving away your leverage point, and then your negotiation position is in a constant state of flux. You don't really have something to offer them.
Thank you, Wanda.
My name's Kent Peterson. I'm a resident. And I'm an investor developer here. I've invested in developing a huge part of my assets of my life of living. There's two or three different bodies here concerned about their positions. And I think we all have equal investment in those positions. Gene has a big investment in this town, as we all do. The developers who have property here already have a big investment in this town. But I totally hope for a rest and a pause to consider the situation. I feel like sometimes as a citizen of the town in the last few years, it's like I've been second fiddle to the developers' needs and wants. I don't see a big panic or big reason to panic and come lining up at the door and sign up for water rights the next few weeks, because we're all afraid that we don't know what's ahead of us. We need to pause and study it. We need to pause and take a rest. I don't think it'll slow down Weeping Bison. I believe there'll be plenty of work down there for them to do before they need to hook up a lot of more places, but maybe they'll need a water right, a hookup right in the next few months. And maybe we could find a solution to set some aside for those kinds of needs so they don't have to slow down. But I have property here too. Someday I hope to develop. And I worry about what my water hookup rights are going to be as a citizen. So I encourage you to consider the solution that will work for a few months until we know where we stand for the future development, not just today's, but for the future development for our kids and our grandkids. So that there'll be plenty of water hookups for everybody.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, thank you. Very good.
I agree with all of that.
Okay, make it short, Lee. This is your second
I, well,
time.
first
up
I
here.
want to, I know, I want to apologize
And
for
then
saying,
Jared's gonna have a second time.
for making little of the 6 months. I understand that that is painful for some people and especially big projects. And I only meant that weighing a delay against possibly catastrophic future for the town, it's not as big a thing. And the other thing, I just wanted to say that, especially after tonight, it would be really good if people couldn't suddenly rush into town hall on Monday and buy up all the remaining water rights, because that could happen. It could happen on Monday. And so I think it's kind of important to pass one of these resolutions.
I'll make this quick. I just wanted to address the wastewater just a little bit because it's in this resolution. I was prepared to address it more on the other agenda item as well, but I just want to say that there are developers that want to take more than they give. And there are developers that want to make sure they get as much as they give. And there are developers who try to make sure they give more than they give. And we pride ourselves in doing our best to be the third. And as evidence of this, we've studied the sewer up and down. We have costed taking sewer all the way to Woodburn. We have, we like other larger developments, and this, whoever wrote this seems to ignore or omit that densities that are greater than 1 unit per acre are required to treat greater than the level of the septic system. We have spent 7-figure money to purchase a packaged treatment plant. It's been made. It's come all the way across the ocean. It's made it through customs, and it's in transit to be delivered to the property on Wednesday. And we have made that significant investment, knowing that we are the lowest spot and that everything from the west, most of the stuff from the west, the Fairfield end, Wildflower, other properties that direction, if we follow the irrigation line, can gravity flow to our property. Property from, sorry, that's from the east. Property from the west, also gravity flows to our property. And we went out of the way at our cost, not knowing whether we could get a reimbursement agreement or not, and have put in a 10-inch sewer line, which is greater than we need, all the way to Water Street, including stubbing it to the public right of way. And so we have been thinking regionally and not just of ourselves and of a solution so that when and if sewer is needed, it's easy to connect at the logical point for a lift station or to add mechanical or add package plants, the ones we've already purchased, and increase the ability to treat water here in Virgin. We have also worked through and put an 8-inch sewer line to the west. We understand that K&K's property across to the north also flows to us quite logically. And so we went out of our way to make sure that, number one, we're taking care of our wastewater and that it treats to a much greater treatment level than septics. And I would like to point out that also the larger developments that have already went in, whether Fairfield, Zion, Wildflower, AutoCamp, are using similar technologies to treat their water so that they are not impacting the groundwater supply. And I think whoever wrote this is a little bit deceptive in the way it's written to imply that this isn't already being handled and taken care of in the permitting process. And it's costing us millions of dollars to do so. And to omit that and give people the illusion that that's not being taken care of and considered is not fair to those of us who have bought these systems and are putting them in or have already put them in. And it's definitely not fair to the public because they have a obvious misunderstanding of what has happened and is being required of those of us who are developing greater than 1 unit per acre because we're in a commercial zone. And I just wanted to point that out, that I think it's really important that we have an open and honest dialogue, and I'm grateful for a public meeting so that these points can come out, so we have better informed decisions.
My name's Jeff Lee. I'm not related to the Lees in the area. I represent, my brother and I own Hidden Canyon Mesa, and we purchased Linda Colette's property. Let me just give you a quick story, and this will feed into my feedback. I am a property owner. I have rights. I'm not a resident. I don't have a home here. In fact, I own several pieces of property in town. Over 2 years ago, I was approached to buy Linda Colette's property, and part of that was the mayor at the time, Matt Spenlove, approached my brother and I saying, we're trying to get a tax base. We're trying to get an economy in Virgin to help pay for the sewer and different things. We want you to come in. We want people to come in to have a business so that we can have a town that will grow. And again, like it or not, that was the approach that was taken. We met with Linda Colette, and she for years had fought against development, but when it came time to sell her property, she wanted market rates for commercial property, and she was willing to sign to get that property